So we have been discussing. I actually went to the Malkönig factory this summer, was it, or spring? And we did some experiments, or just experiments, not really research, but experiments. With we were playing around with the EK grinder, the K30 grinder, and so on. And one of the things that I really found interesting is that we could get the coffee to taste good on all the grinders. They just have different extractions when they taste good. So the EK, we had the highest extraction from memory, and then K30 was just slightly below, and another grinder just slightly below that to make it taste good. But I just want to emphasize why Christian is here today, because it's a roaster's forum, right? It's not a barista forum or a grinding forum. But I changed to using an EK grinder last summer, and one of the first obvious things was that you can clearly taste when your coffee is not roasted well. It's so much easier than if you do it with a lower extraction on any other grinder. And one of the reasons for that is because you're extracting more of the coffee, so you can actually taste more of your coffee. So if you're slightly underdeveloping or slightly over-roasted, it's so much easier to taste it because you have more clarity and the extraction is higher. But one of the problems is if you don't adjust the TDS, that means if you're dosing the same as you would do on a normal grinder, you will get a very, very strong cup. So it's hard to actually taste when you get the concentration up. So you actually have to use less coffee to get to the same strength, but with a much higher extraction. We're going to taste that afterwards so people understand it a little bit more in practical terms. But I prepared some questions, and I hope the audience will just leave me with one question and then you take over. But let's see. Maybe we can start with the heat thing. A difficult one. Because I read many years ago in the ILI Science of Quality that espresso should not, the ground should not be hotter than 40 degrees because the oils change and it will change your extraction. Do you have any research or experience with this? And we see some grinders now that are using heat to make it more stable in terms of grind settings, and some grinders are cooling to make it, but both are sort of difficult technologies. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, we tested all these different technologies from competitors and ours, and had our ideas about it. So from my experience and what we found out, it's all the heating and cooling of the grind chamber itself might help in keeping the grind adjustment constant. So that's what it said on the last slide about the material expanding. So if the grind chamber goes hotter, the expansion of the materials, the metal expands, and therefore the grind adjustment changes, and therefore the extraction changes. And you directly see it in the espresso, but of course also in the filter coffee. If you do many filter coffees, then you heat up the grind. So one idea is to preheat it. So when you actually dial it in, you will have a longer time constant grind adjustment. And when then the heat of the coffee comes with the preheating, you will have to cool the grind chamber to keep it at 45 degrees. I think that's what they say. And same if you try to cool the grind chamber. As I said, there's no way of keeping it real cool. You might have to do water cooling or really very strong cooling to keep the grind chamber cool. But that will not prevent the coffee from getting hot, because the coffee gets hot anyway if the discs are warming up, and the friction of the coffee in itself and the discs and the grind chamber comes out, and you grind 3 double shots a minute, espresso speaking, then the coffee will get hot no matter what you do with the grind chamber. So from the test, so that's technically speaking on the grind adjustment and the size of the grind chamber and the extraction, the grind adjustment. But if you talk about really the taste, the oils, and the coffee itself, what happens when it heats up while grinding? There are some studies, but they're all not really easy and not really general speaking. So we can't really say that below 40, you're fine. 40 degrees Celsius, you're fine. And then there are some steps we don't really know. We know that every 5 to 10 degrees, something happens, something else happens. And there's also general understanding that at around 55 to, well, the highest 60 degrees, the coffee really turns, and then it gets bad. So before that, there's changes, but it's still on the favorable side. But if the coffee gets hotter than 55 degrees, then you will have some bad influences. But more than that, what really happens is the oils, yes, but it's very difficult to say.
All right. Anyone wants to ask a question or have a comment to this? Yes, there's one guy. Yes.
Hi. We do a little bit of work on some roller grinders as well. And there we've noticed that changing the initial distance between the first two rollers and the next two and the next two, they're not related to each other at different grind sizes. So as we get smaller, the first gap has to get larger often to get the even grind. Is there any research with grinders with this yet?
I have to admit that I don't really have any experience on roller mills, because we just, at Marken, we don't have them. And of course, we've been in contact with the producers, Baumeister and Probert and so on. We can get them and to get some general knowledge, but that goes beyond my experience, actually. So in burr grinders or conical grinders, whatever, there's really, mainly there are some who have 2 steps, but there's really only 1 step of grinding. And of course, we have different teeth in the disc. So we have coarse teeth in the middle that go all the way through, and then the fine teeth in the very end. And that makes a big difference in how the coffee comes out, how you design these teeth. But in comparison to roller mills, sorry.
Okay.
But there was also a point that we discussed first. Might that be a question? Why are in the factories on the industrial level, so hundreds and hundreds of kilograms per hour, maybe tons per hour of grinding, you use roller mills. And they are said to be very, very accurate. And if you set the distances of the different steps correct, you will have a very, very uniform grind size and very uniform particle size distribution. So why are there no roller mills on coffee shop tables? And I also asked that to the producers of the roller mills, and it's just that we just cannot downsize them that much. And the price would still be enormous. So we all know the prices like of the biggest burr grinders are, let's say, 20,000 euros the most, and I think the cheapest roller mill starts at 40,000, 50,000 euros. So this is where we are now, and if we try to downsize the roller mills and keep the accuracy and keep the quality of the rollers, I think it's price-wise will be very, very difficult. And it's a shame because it might give us a better quality, but it's just not possible to put that on the table, so to say. One more question in the back.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm Ingo Vincent from Probert, and I would like to comment maybe
Yes,
a little
please.
bit this matter. Yeah, roller mills in the industry are of course really accurate because we have of course technical features on board like cooling between the rolls, like gap adjustment and so on. What brings us in the chance to have a real accurate grinding. But if you want to slim this technology really to the size what you need for a shop, then it would be very expensive. That's one of the reasons why we have no roller mills in this size. The smallest what we have is normally that what we use for capacities up to, starting from 50 kilogram up to 100, let's say. That is the smallest we have. So we have not think about something, to build something smaller so far.
Any other questions? All right, so yeah, there's one here.
It's not regarding the grinding per se. In the beginning of the presentation, you said that roasting for an EK40 you have to roast lighter.
No. Okay, I can explain this a little bit. So
Okay. It's always a good question.
you can still roast the way you want to, the light or dark or whatever. But the way we roast, we're always on the border of it can be underdeveloped and it can be slightly baked or you get some roasty flavors. So if you want to sort of get more precision in your roasting and more consistency in your roasting, it's easier to taste it when you have a higher extraction. And one of the reasons, actually when I tested the K30 for the first time in 2004, and I hated it because we didn't have the filter baskets to be able to extract enough. So once you had the extraction you need, which is probably around 21 or 20 to 21% on the K30, the old filter baskets would just be blocked, so you couldn't get anything out, and then you had severe channeling and so on. So now the new filter baskets are around, and you're able to extract much higher, more easily. And when you try the K30 grinder again, then of course your coffee tastes like just really bad because you have been roasting for under extraction for so many years, and all of a sudden you're extracting much higher. So you do have at least it happened for me. Our espressos were much darker just 2 years ago than they are today, and that's because we are able to extract more and have equipment that we can measure it and we can taste the coffee more easily. So when you taste more of the coffee and the coffee is more over roasted, it just becomes severely bitter and carbony. So the reactions that I've seen many roasters who start using the EK in their quality control is, yes, they tend to go slightly lighter on the roast, but they also tend to have more developed roast than before.
Sorry. Okay, that's for more for lab on the lab side, but it's going to be difficult to get my customers, all of my customers, to get an EK43 to use my coffee.
Yeah.
So if I do my testing and my lab work in the roastery on EK43 and do all my roasting on that basis, and then deliver my coffee to a customer who has whatever in K30, the results are going to be different, correct?
Yeah, but when we do our production cupping, for instance, we grind on an old grinder and an EK grinder. We have 2 cups, so we compare them. And in my experience, the good roast will taste great on both grinders. It doesn't really matter. The only issues we've had with, especially with espresso, is that our customers who don't use good filter baskets or are not, extracting enough, they call us and say the coffee is sour. It tastes, incredibly sour. And then we just give them some free new filter basket and tell them, okay, you measure this amount of grams in and this amount of grams out, and it's going to taste good. And they always come back to us, and yes, it tastes good when they do that. And it's not like our roast style is very light, so it's not for everyone to like, and that's fine. But that's what we like. So if we have customers who like that, we are able to sort of please them more now.
That was the same question that I saw also online of a roaster who said, we are now roasting for EK43 and this is why, blah, 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 like the same question you asked. And then an end customer asked, well, with my shitty home grinder I was okay with